is The Gorge, a podcast where my friend Sara and I gorge ourselves on overanalyzing a game or game-related topic. The Gorge is brought to you by Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/thegorgepodcast, you can donate money once a month and you'll get a bunch of cool shit. And this week we are doing something a little special. Sara, what are we doing this week?
This week we've decided we're going to talk about our 5 favorite games of all time.
Yes.
Because we were talking about it. This 2017 was kind of a crazy year for video games, and both kind of introduced new games into like our library of stuff we've played that changed kind of the way we look at video games, or just kind of wheedled their way into our top 5 list. And because of it, we were talking about it, and we thought it would be cool if every year, the first podcast of the year, we would do a top 5 episode to see if anything changed, if our opinions of old games are different now, if there are new games on it. Because, again, it's a very mutable list. Obviously, as you play more video games, your definition of what makes a good video game, one of your favorites, changes every year. It's like movies.
Yeah, it's because video games are so like are so there's so much variety now compared to what we would have had, 10 or 20 years ago. Like, it's hard to, just like you can't say, oh, what's your favorite movie? Oh, well, favorite action movie, favorite horror movie, favorite what, like, you like things for different reasons. And so we decided, what are your top 5 right now? Like
in this moment, with a year of video games behind you, and all of your life playing video games, what are your top 5 at this moment? And every year we thought, as long as this podcast is going, we thought we would, come back to it and kind of re-talk out our top 5.
Yeah. So,
So did we want to get started?
Yeah, I was going to ask you how you wanted to do this exactly. I figure we could either do, one of us would do all of ours at once, and then the other person would go, or we could alternate, or go from like 5 to 1 each, one at a time.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking we could both, tell what our number 5 is, and then our number 4, and so forth and so on, and then just kind of head down the list.
Yeah.
And find out. Because I think that would be, and then, we'd have at the end, we could have a little bit more discussion of our number 1. Sound good?
Sure, sounds good.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, alright, I'll go first.
Go for it.
This one was literally down to this week is how I put this one on the list. And I will explain why. My number 5 for favorite video games of all time for this year is Mega Man X.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's one I haven't played yet, so maybe sell me on it.
Well, actually, the reason it's on this list and Star Fox 64 is not on this list is because I watched a butt ton of AGDQ. And they did a any percent all Buster run, which was great. I'm currently watching the 3-way any percent race.
Oh, right. I saw that on Twitter.
And I also watched the X2 and X3 one, so I'm watching the original X one right now.
Right.
And they're just, that's what got me thinking, like, God, Mega Man X is such a good fucking game. So, I think I've mentioned briefly how I have a cousin who was older than me, and he had an SNES before I did, and so I played a lot of games at his house whenever my mom and my aunt would get together, and I would go over there. I would play all the games that I never got to play at my house. And Mega Man X was one of them. Mm-hmm. And so it became this game that I would just play over and over again, because I only got to play it when I was with him. So, and it's this game that over time and just constant replaying and playing, I have basically memorized.
Yeah, I have games like that.
And
for sure.
and it's like it's very interesting because when I was considering what to put on this list, the thing I wanted to consider all of them is not just games that I really, really like, but games that I can consistently go back to at any time and still enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's valid. I think my list is a lot like that, too.
And I've got my runtime for Mega Man X down to an hour, so I can be like, I have an hour to crack out, I can just play Mega Man X.
Really?
Yeah,
To beat the whole thing?
The whole game, start to finish, getting all the items and stuff, about an hour, maybe an hour, 20 minutes, depending on how the final boss goes.
Wow, that's actually very impressive.
It's funny, just, like, I know that, like, X2 and X3, like, it's weird. I've played X2 and X3, I've played a lot of the X games, actually, because I really like the X games over Mega Man. The, like, original Mega Man, there's, just the way Mega Man X has more movement options and more speed and more action going on. And so I've played a vast majority of them. I've put my hands on all of them. I've only played 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8 consistently.
Right.
But as much as I think X3 is better than X1, I like X1 more just because I have so much familiarity with it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And, like, it's so weird to play because mechanically X2 and X3 are, like, the exact same playstyle as X1, but, like, it's so unfamiliar territory for me compared to how I have the first game completely down.
Right.
And it's just like a fun game to just easily crack out. I would play it at my friend's house when I finally managed to obtain my own copy of it. I bought the X collection for the PlayStation 2, so now I have everything.
Because when you love a video game, you will inevitably buy 700
when
copies of it.
Apparently, when I love games, I just keep buying copies of them. And I'll get to that later on my list too. But
no, I'm the same way though. Totally.
I also bought it on the Wii Virtual Console because they were selling it there, and I'm just like, oh.
Is there a phone version? Oh, okay, never mind.
The phone version is trash.
Is it? Oh, that
because
sucks.
Okay, so here's why. You've seen the Ego Raptor video, right?
Yeah.
How he talks?
Of course.
He talks.
Lemons. Yeah, lemons.
Mega Man. He talks. Actually, I was watching the HDQ. The commentators for the speedruns all call the Buster Shot lemons. So
of course, because they're lemons for sure.
But so the big thing he makes a difference about is that Mega Man Classic is based off of obstacle course rooms. As you go to a room, you jump or whatever, or you slide or do whatever, and then you hit a door or a wall, and then the whole thing scrolls up and it takes you to the next room. That's how Mega Man is presented. And X is different. It is all one big open map. There's no loading. There's no, like, scene transition. It's all just constant flowing.
It's kind of, is it like because again, I haven't actually played Mega Man X. Is it like a Metroidvania?
It's not really Metroidvania.
Okay.
It's just that the level is like one big linear-ish level. Okay, but it's not. Okay. You don't have like where you hit the wall or hit like the opening and then the screen shifts over to show you the next obstacle. It all just goes. Right. It's all start to finish, like a Mario level or a Sonic level. You know?
Right. Okay.
The iPhone version is not only super zoomed in on X, it introduces the classic Mega Man style scene transitions.
Aw, boo!
So
that blows.
It negates the benefit of having dashing and wall jumping in X by not giving you the big open levels that you need. So the phone version is garbage, and it also has a thing where it's constantly charging your Buster even if you're not pressing it, because there's no way to hold down a button to charge your shot. So they had to auto set it, and it's really annoying and bad. And they did the Phoenix Wright iPhone port where instead of like the actual sprites, pixelated sprites, they cleaned them into vectors. And I think that looks like trash.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Phoenix Wright version. I am a big fan of the Apollo Justice version, but that's just because the art style is way better. And
because a DS can handle more artistic, more graphic-wise than an SNES can. But
Right.
I digress.
And it just looks like garbage for Mega Man
Yeah,
X.
because like it's an SNES style. Like if you were to upgrade it for like the PlayStation versions, and that'd be fine. But like it doesn't work when you have 16-bit sprites upgraded to vectors because they lose their appeal.
Right. Right. That makes sense.
But the point is that like it's just the Mega Man X series is just like a game, and it's kind of funny because like you would think that the X games have that upgrade, have that like boost in like mobility and mechanics because they're upgrading to a whole new platform. Like Mega Man X, I think, came out before Mega Man 7 on the SNES.
Right.
But Mega Man 7 is back to the classic style of like scene transitions, and there's no dashing, there's no wall jumping, you just have your slide. So it's cool that like the X series is almost like a straight upgrade of classic Mega Man. And I just really appreciate that about it. And it's also got a killer soundtrack, and like Capcom's always been good about soundtracks, especially in the SNES era.
Right. Yeah,
and it's just like a game that's like, not only is it mechanically great, it's been part of my life for so long that I always feel
how
good
could it not
going
be
back
on
to
the
it.
list? Yeah, exactly. Like I get that. I feel that. And you know, it has just that old style. I think is. I've never actually played it, but I mean I've seen it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean they just look great.
Oh, they look phenomenal. Like it's amazing.
They look great.
It's amazing what companies like Capcom could do with the SNES. You know, there are certain companies that stand out, like Squaresoft and Capcom really stand out as like, look what we can do with the 16-bit sprites.
And, Squaresoft.
Yeah, back then, yeah.
Remember back in the day before the Spirit Within ruined everything? But yeah, no, I feel that. I totally do. Just, you know, there's memory. Like, a lot of these games have, like, memories attached to them, but also they're just still incredibly mechanically sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like I said, the only reason that this is on the list and not Star Fox 64, which is another game that is, like, so deeply ingrained in my brain that I could probably play it blindfolded, is just that I had that recent boost of, like, oh god, AGDQ reminded me how much I fucking love Mega Man X, and I was like, I was straight up tempted last night to just play it, but my PlayStation 2 isn't hooked up right now, so I had no way to actually start it up without, like, pulling it out and plugging everything in.
Right, getting behind that TV.
Yeah.
No thanks. But, yeah, so...
So what is your number 5?
Number 5, this is... I probably get some people saying, like, recency bias and all that stuff, but fine, it's fine. It's my favorite, my top 5 games right now, and, this is kind of like with you and Star Fox and Mega Man X. It just depends on whose soundtrack I've listened to that day. So it could be either number 4 or 5, but I put it at 5 because 4, I listened to its soundtrack today. Anyway, number 5 is Undertale.
Okay, alright, yep.
Yeah, and we talked for 2 hours about Undertale already, so I won't spend too much time on it. But Undertale actually is... Undertale is one of those games, like those rare games where it's like the internet won't shut the hell up about it for 2 years, and you're like, how can it possibly be as good as everybody says it is? And then you play it and you go, oh right.
Oh, that's how. Yep. Okay, I see now. Yep, you're right. You were right, internet.
That's how. Because Undertale does a lot of things that I've been waiting, like, I think I even said this in the podcast, but it bears repeating. Undertale has did a lot of things that I wanted video games to do for a long time. And it does it basically perfectly, which is really surprising. It does the whole, instead of presenting you with big moral choices, BioWare style, it just takes all of your choices into consideration.
Yes.
The world actually reflects, it actually does reflect your actions in it.
Yeah,
and
you know,
characters react to you differently.
It's not do I want to fill the red meter or do I want to fill the blue meter? It is that your choices actually do matter in that they will have ripples across the rest of the game.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me. I mean, I just think it's so between the soundtrack and just the really strong character writing. Like, I knew the soundtrack was good. I knew it had different endings. I knew it was a game where nobody had to die. I knew all of that, but I really didn't expect the character writing to be so strong. I thought it was a case of a fandom taking characters who are kind of, God, I can't believe I'm about to say this. Please don't do this to me. Skeletal. And then, like, adding meat to the bones.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean, though.
Yeah. But, no. Actually, the case is that all of these characters are incredibly fleshed out, and they feel very, human, ? And relatable. And,
we said the...
hanging out... Oh,
we said the word a lot, but endearing is the word I would use.
Endearing and friendly and charming.
Yes.
So
charming is also a good word for it.
So charming and so just listening to certain soundtracks feels like drinking a mug of hot cocoa.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah,
like
no,
the
I
Snowed
know.
In Town, the Snowed In Town track and a few others like it. The actual track labeled Undertale, the one that plays when you're going to fight Asgore for the first time, and it's that guitar track that, like when the monsters are explaining to you what happened to Kara and Asriel.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those tracks that, like, never fails to kind of rip my heart out of my chest. I just hear it because it's so simple and it's so, like, it's so beautiful. I mean, like, yeah, of course the soundtrack is such an important part of Undertale. I actually bought the $3 PS4 theme just because.
How does it look?
It's beautiful. It's incredibly beautiful.
Okay.
Everything's pixelated, and it plays a really nice remix of the Ruins theme. Because just firing it up again kind of feels like coming home to a warm blanket.
Yeah.
It's a nice feeling. And Undertale, even when it's like ripping my heart out of my chest or making me feel really uncomfortable, one day I kind of want to go back and do like a mini episode about more about the Genocide Run, because it is one of the most uncomfortable feelings in a video game.
Right.
Even then, when it's breaking my heart, or it's making my skin crawl, or it's like making me feel deeply unsettled, Undertale definitely feels like coming home.
I think
it's just so warm.
I think a good place to do that would be as a follow-up for when we inevitably do Earthbound. I think that would be an incredible place to talk again about Undertale, because, hey, there's some inspiration drawn from there.
Yeah, didn't Toby Fox do,
he did an Earthbound hack, yeah.
Yeah, he did Earthbound hacks, so yeah, for sure, I think that sounds like a great idea, because Undertale is just, for me, it feels very, like a game I'll probably be thinking about in 5 years.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, Undertale is number 5.
Yeah, it is. It's very, like, it'll leave a mark on you when you're done with it.
It leaves a big mark on, it left a big mark on my soul, and
yep.
I really, it really just feels so, it's so strange. It's another game where, like, I know the whole message is that you're not supposed to replay it a billion times, because perverted sentimentality and stuff, but I also really want to rebuy it, like, on the PS4, and again for my PC, and I'm just like, let me throw more money at you, Toby Fox. But that's missing the point, so like right now I'm like holding off. So number 4.
Number 4 for me, this is going to be one that I think is the only crossover we're going to have on this list. If I know you at all.
Okay, yeah. Then I know what you're talking about.
Number 4 is Persona 4.
Ironically, it's P4.
Yeah. This is another one where I was like up in the air, like, do I put this one on the list? Where do I slot it? What do I do? And the only reason it's on the number 4 slot and not any higher, I think, is because I just recently played P5. Right. And so it's not like, P4 isn't like at the forefront of my mind, otherwise it would be higher up. Right. But, I mean, it's always gonna be there because it is one of the best JRPGs I've ever played. For, the 6 hours we talked about it cumulatively already.
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, what do I say about this game I already haven't expressed in the podcast at some point? And I think the only thing I can really talk about that we have left about it is that how I first started playing it after your insistence that I pick it up. And,
yeah.
that weird, like, you can always, like, whenever you replay a game, like an RPG like this, you always are kind of, like, hit with, like, when you first started up again, like, you're always hit with, like, oh yeah, I remember what was going on in my life when this event in the game happened, or, like, I remember where I was.
Yeah.
Like, I have very fond memories of, like, starting up Tales of Vesperia, and where I physically was when that started up, and what I was thinking about it, and that sentimentality of it. And same thing for P4, which is, like, you know, I can start the game up and go to the main menu, and seeing the silhouettes of the cast members and hearing the music is just like, oh, yeah.
It's like a punch. It's like a punch right in your memories.
Yeah.
It's going back. P4 is now old enough that, like, it's 8 years old now, 9 years old now, and so there's, like, a real genuine nostalgia tied to it.
It's one of those things where it's like I have to, like, skip past it as quick as possible, or else it will affect me emotionally if I linger on the menu too long.
Because the menu is really, I don't know,
like,
the track they picked for the menu is really strong.
It's one of the reasons I'm glad I switched to the golden version, because it doesn't, I can just suspend my game, and I don't have to go back to the main menu ever, and I can just pick right up, and I don't have to go through that emotional turmoil. The emotional turmoil caused by the menu screen of a JRPG. Right? And don't even talk to me about, like, the credit sequence, which is just like, oh fuck,
God.
Oh, no.
Fuck that. No, I'm only one woman, and my emotions can only take so much.
But, we talked about Persona 4 for fucking hours and hours.
I know.
And
I know.
It's one of those things where I'm just like, oh, what's left to say about it? And, it's what it's always been. These characters are great. The setting is awesome. There's so much to do. The Golden added so much more to the experience, and it's very rare you get, like, an expansion like this that, like, not only is not like, oh, it's cool, it's added content, but that added content really builds on, like, everything that makes the original game good. Not just the mechanic, but the quality of life mechanic improvements. Not only, like, I really love the ability to design your own difficulty level in the Golden. I think that's one of the coolest features to ever add in a JRPG.
Right.
Because, like, oh, how do I want to be challenged? Or, like, I'm having trouble with this, so I can get more money so I can buy more weapons, and then I can turn it back down once I've got my fill. I think that's great. Right. I think that's super cool. The added content, the social links, Marie and Adachi are both just, like, that's really good. Their writing for those are both really strong. It's just it's very rare that you get a game that's, like, so improved, not just mechanically, but also thematically, by getting the updated re-release like that. And, yeah.
I have a lot to say, because P4 is on my list, which is why I'm not, like, making a lot of commentary right now about P4, because I want to hold off until I get to it. So all I can say is, like, I totally agree with you. I'm, like, holding back on my commentary right now, because, like, eventually...
we can get back more into P4 when you get to it, so that we can, like, hash it out even more.
Exactly. So, with that said, number 4 is another recency bias one, but it's a lot like Undertale, and this is what I mean when I say soundtracks affect where it falls on the list. Obviously, it's Nier Automata.
Of course Nier is going to be on this list.
Of course, Nier Automata is a game that I have not replayed since I beat it a few months ago, which is weird, because I immediately launched right back into Undertale. I was like, must play more. And I've just, like, devoured Undertale information, but I have kept kind of, like, a slight, now I wouldn't say emotional distance, but I haven't quite, like, immersed myself in it the way I did in Undertale for about 2 months. Nier is a game that, just by, like, my floundering, obviously, is a game that I have a hard time putting into words the way it makes me feel.
It's very difficult to, like, fully articulate why Nier is good, I was trying to sell it to a friend recently, and I was like, it was like, okay, so what did you like about it? And I was like, what do I like about Nier?
The answer is everything, but that there's like an asterisk next to that everything.
It's like,
because
what in the game did you like? I don't really know if I liked a lot in the game, but I liked the way the game made me feel.
I love so much about Nier, and it's so hard to put those feelings into words, because Nier is not a scary game, but Nier haunts you. Nier, it is haunting in the way it just kind of leeches itself into your mind, and you're left with these really heavy themes of, especially when you're like 29 and like the world still doesn't make a lot of sense, and you're like, oh god, what am I doing with my life? And Nier is that weird existential game that it seems tailor-made for people kind of approaching a quarter-life crisis. Because it covers a lot of really heavy things about like cyclical actions and the effects our actions have on each other and our place in the world, and what we deserve versus what we want, and like struggling to be happy. Like all of these incredibly like very, very heavy feelings that just kind of build up in your chest, and I mean, I feel like the way I'm talking about Nier, it should be higher on the list, and maybe next year it will be, when I've like finally gotten the heart to replay it. Because I mean, yeah, and it's fun to play. It honestly is really fun to play.
It's enjoyable
I
to
actually
play.
really enjoy the battle system for Nier.
It's kind of like one of those things where it's like, you know, say you're like trying to sell someone on a movie, you know, and it's like something like, I don't know, something like, we'll say you're trying to sell someone on Stranger Things, okay?
Right.
And it's like, yeah, you can say like, saying like, yeah, the gameplay in Nier is really good, is like saying, yeah, they did a real good job with the 80s aesthetic in Stranger Things. Like
in Stranger Things, yeah.
Yes, you're right, but that's not the point.
That's not the most important part of Automata.
Yeah.
Or Automata. I think it's Automata. I was reading the other day that it's Automata, and I've got to get used to saying it like that. Because
honestly, you could just say Nier, and people will know which one you're talking about, because no one played the first Nier.
Because, poor first Nier, it is a good game, but it's not a good game. Now, that's a game that can leave you conflicted.
Yeah.
But Automata is actually a good video game, and it's beautiful, and it's haunting, and my god, the soundtrack,
oh my god, it's so beautiful. It's
so strong.
I still think like this is important. Like I told you, I think I said in the podcast, like the aesthetic of the soundtrack is like staying up really, really late in high school to watch anime on Adult Swim, and that's what that kind of like weird when you're really exhausted but you want to see what happens next in Full Metal Alchemist, and you enter that kind of like state. That's exactly what it feels like. Yeah,
Nier just kind of like, it's stuck with me, and it's still kind of it's always in the back of my head lately. It's kind of been in my mind a lot more lately for really no reason other than we talked about it during the Game of the Year talks, and people have been giving it the award lately. So it's kind of been at the forefront of my brain again, and I just think about all of these really strong themes and feelings, and the weird dreamlike quality of it, and it's all held together by this incredible soundtrack, and is made with so much, like, it's like bursting even when it's making you miserable, and my god, does Nier make me miserable often. It's just bursting at the seams with, like, love. It's just made from a place of... Nier and Undertale feel very similar to me, even though they're, like, drastically different games. Because both of them are made from these places of deep love of a certain kind of video game and a certain kind of feeling. It's... in Undertale, it's familiarity and nostalgia and friendliness and togetherness and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And Nier is made with a sense of love for kind of the strange nature of weird video games. I just love it. Hopefully next year I'll be talking about this again.
Yeah,
I just adore it.
Like I said, like it's a game where it's kind of hard to sell based on what's actually in the game, because what's important is how it makes you feel. The friend I was telling it about, I was like, I need you to play it, and I need you to beat it completely, even if you hate it. Even if you hate it, because it will leave you different. As someone,
it leaves an impression on you.
As someone who's experienced with video games and has been playing them for a long time, like the friend I was talking about, he does streams, and so like I'm like, dude, you will be different. You will see video games differently when you come out of playing Nier.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've been like selling it to my entire friend group, and maybe eventually one of them will play it, so I can have another friend to scream about Nier with. But yeah, man, Nier is awesome. Nier is really, really something else, and it's number 4 for me.
Right,
so.
right.
Number 3?
Number 3 for me is one that was not hard to put on the list at all.
Right.
But it was like its placement was hard because of the other 2 on the list. But my number 3 is Kingdom Hearts 2.
Hey, this is a game I can actually talk about intelligently.
It was a debate because it was a brief debate where I put it, because I had recently played Dream Drop Distance and I really liked that one a lot too, and I was like, which one is my current favorite? But I think Kingdom Hearts 2 is better, because I think it is a good ideal representation of like the franchise as a whole.
Yeah.
I put this game on the list because it represents my all-encompassing adoration for all things Kingdom Hearts.
Right.
And I think this is the game where it's like, if you take a step back and you look at it, this game is packed to the brim with stuff.
Yeah, it's absolutely stuffed to the gills with content. And it's all really good content.
There are so many different mini games. There's a cool on-rail Star Fox shooter built into it. There are Tron light cycles built into it. There's weird FPS style things incorporated. There's a really dumb rhythm game built into it.
Oh, yeah!
That no one likes, and I'm glad it's not in any other game.
Nobody likes Atlantica.
No. But it's like, this whole thing is built up. Just like, there's so much going on that it's incredible.
No, I feel that. I do, because Kingdom Hearts 2 is, I don't play Kingdom Hearts, you know.
I know.
But Kingdom Hearts 2 is actually a game I replayed, like 3-4 times.
I think I've done it about 4 times as well on various different platforms.
Because Kingdom Hearts 2 feels good to play.
Oh, it's... I was thinking about it, like, when we were playing Final Fantasy 12, and I was like, Kingdom Hearts 2 is around this time. This game would be so much better if it played like Kingdom Hearts 2.
Yeah, and they eventually did in 15.
They did, yes,
15
but
15 is just Kingdom Hearts.
I'm like, why did it take you this long to give us an action JRPG, like a Final Fantasy action RPG, like of the caliber of the Kingdom Hearts series? Because all of them, except maybe for 1, because that's really old now, but like 2 and Birth by Sleep and Dream Drop Distance, all of them play really, really well. And they're fast, and they're fun, and you can do crazy spells, and there are enemies all over the screen, and it's like, you have this system that is yours, you're Square Enix, you built this system, why aren't you using it in more stuff?
Right, yeah, and it's, I don't know, I wonder if Lightning Returns used the system, because that might be where it started, but Kingdom Hearts 2 just always felt really good to play. It just felt, like, responsive. It felt right. You know?
There was a lot of weight to your movements. There's a lot of like...
Yeah, it didn't have the floaty... It didn't have a lot of the weird floatiness of Kingdom Hearts 1.
Yeah, Sora is way faster in 2. He's way more responsive. He has so much more mobility options. You know, quick dashing, double jumping, magic is much more useful in 2 than in 1. It's just this huge marked improvement over 1. And... not only that, but it also has a bunch of really great worlds. You know, Tron is really cool. Pirates of the Caribbean is really cool. You can do Tokyo drifting in Pride Lands as Lion Sora.
Oh man, I forgot about Lion Sora.
Yeah,
Man,
that's another thing.
That was a good level.
They built like an entire mechanic system for Sora as a lion that you only do for the one world, and then you're done with it. It's only in the one, and that's cool.
Yeah, it's a good representation of Square Enix's dedication to the craft. Even if I don't necessarily like some of the directions they took with the company later with Final Fantasy 13 and things like that. Square Enix, and I'm even kind of ambivalent toward 15. Square Enix games still always feel very like well crafted.
The presentation in those games is good. Like, no matter what you can say about 15, whether or not you enjoy the story or the gameplay or whatever.
Whether it's finished or not.
Yeah. I always think back where I was like, there's that screenshot that got released, like, I think like a month or so before the game actually came out, where it's Luna Freya in her limo.
Yeah.
And I was like, I remember looking at that screenshot and thinking, that's the best seatbelt I've ever seen in a video game. And I was like, my attention was drawn to the seatbelt she had on. And I was like, that's really, really well crafted. That's amazing. And you know, it's her, like, of course, like, it's her with her hair all done up and she's got the sparkly dress, and I'm still like, that seatbelt is really impressive.
That seatbelt, though.
And
because
I always point to Kingdom Hearts, and I think this is something that doesn't really get talked about a lot because you don't notice it until it's gone, is the fucking lip syncing and facial animation in the Kingdom Hearts series.
Yeah, they're really solid.
It's top of the line, and it's funny because like in the HD ports, the PS3 and the PS4 ports that got put out, the cutscenes for Chain of Memories and I think Coded are not lip synced. They didn't go and edit the facial animations to sync with English dialogue. And boy, you can tell. Boy, it looks real bad when it's not there.
Right, yeah, it shows.
But not only that, like even back if you think of like the PS2 era, the amount of like facial animation in the Disney characters especially is so well done. You know, even little things like it's funny because when you do like side-by-side comparisons of like here's a character in Kingdom Hearts compared to how they looked in the Disney movie, and it's like wow, they even got like the little details. Like Jack Skellington and 2, his facial animations are only limited to what he expressed as a clay model in the movie. Yeah, if you like,
that's so rad.
His animation for like his facial expressions is a little bit more choppy than the other characters, and it's because he's only using the faces he made in the movie.
Yeah, that is so rad.
So there's
I mean, like, yeah, that's incredibly. It's so cool.
Yeah, there's so many little like subtle details and stuff, and I always greatly appreciate that kind of level of commitment to like expressing, to really capture the presence and the feel of this kind of thing.
Right, I feel that. So yeah. That's a solid choice. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's number 3. What's number 3 for you?
Silent Hill 2.
Okay. Yeah.
Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 is a game that is a strange game for me. I've beaten it a lot. I've beaten it 3 or 4 times. And it's a game that I have a lot of memories, kind of, because sometimes games that you love the most are games that you have, like, memories tied to, places in your life. And Silent Hill 2 is one of those, which is a weird game to have fond memories tied to, but it's fine.
That's like, oh, I feel real nostalgic for Saw.
Yeah, it's basically like that. Because Silent Hill 2 is a game, the first time I ever played... Well, if you're out there, Jonathan, I'm sorry I stole your copy of Silent Hill 2 from you. But you were also kind of an asshole, so I don't actually feel that bad.
Oh, God, there's so many games that it's just like, I borrowed this from a friend, and then we stopped hanging out. And
yeah, because he was kind of an asshole, and that's how I ended up with my first copy of Silent Hill 2.
I have games because of that, and I've lost games because of that.
I have lost games because of that, yeah, for sure. But Silent Hill 2 it was in high school. This dude was like, you need to try this. I'm like, sure. I play it, and then I played it through. So this is my younger brother and I. We're 2.5 years apart. We're really close. And when we lived in the house that we lived in when I was in high school, he had like the best room in the world for playing video games in, because he had like this huge bedroom and he had this like weird little nook set off in a corner that was like, it had walls around it, except for it had like 3 walls around it, and it was like tucked into a corner, and it was the perfect little place to just sit and play video games and talk shit all night, you know?
Oh, that's really cool.
It was the best, man, and there was a fold-out bed, and I swear to God, I slept more on that fold-out bed for like 2 years in high school than I ever did in my own bed, because we would stay up all night playing video games, and I would be tired, and I wouldn't want to go to my bed. I would just sleep in my brother's room. And so Silent Hill 2 was one of those games, but it's like the best one of those games. The other one is Devil May Cry. But Silent Hill 2 is the game that we spent the most time playing and talking about. We talk about Silent Hill 2 a lot, and we just sat and we were terrified the whole time, and it made my skin crawl. It still gives me nightmares sometimes. I still have bad dreams about Pyramid Head. I'm 29. I do. Pyramid Head just like disconcerts me in a way that I can't really put into like human words.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like you experienced it when you were much younger, and so it has had time to have a lasting impression on you. And you experienced it back when the PS2 was new and fresh, and so you weren't looking at it with modern eyes and being like, "Why is that scary?"
Yeah, you were just like, "Oh God, this is just deeply existentially terrifying." And Silent Hill 2 is this perfect little microcosm of like my video game playing time as a teenager from when I was like 13, like 12, 13, and 14. 15 and 15-ish as well. My brother moved in with my dad when I was 15, or when he was 15. So before he moved away, we had this little like period of time where we were just joined at the hip and constantly playing video games. And Silent Hill 2 was the one that just really just captured us. And every time I go back to it, I'm kind of taken back to that little nook in the corner, and I'm just as scared. And it's just like, because Silent Hill 2 is that weird frighteningness that like can really put a strange fear in a teenager, which is strange because the game that's about a teenager is Silent Hill 3.
Yeah, but this one is more about like middle-aged problems and like coping as an adult. But like it's still, I don't know. I don't want to put ideas in your head because this is your thing, but I can theorize at least, and it's like because you're seeing what could be about yourself in James. Like this is a possibility, like not this exact situation, but that dread and that sort of avoidance as an adult. That's scary to think that could happen to you.
Yeah, and just poor coping mechanisms was on our brain a lot, and not to get like too incredibly heavy because that's a really heavy conversation. But we were going through some shit,
right?
And so we were coping with it in very different ways because we are very, very different people, and so Silent Hill 2 was a game about bad coping mechanisms in a time where we were trying to navigate our own coping mechanisms. And so there's just a lot tied up in it, and so that music can take me back, that the game itself and the characters are really captivating, and it's just it scares the life out of me.
You know what I think is a really, really unsettling thing about Silent Hill, and this is kind of weird to say, but
that's fine.
The menu sound effects.
The menu sound effects are the most jarring goddamn thing. You're right.
I don't know what it is about them, but like
I don't like
not
them.
the music, not the scraping of monsters against metal surfaces, but like whenever someone goes to the menus in that game, and it's like that really muted, like kind of like
honking, like a
yeah,
sound.
and like
I don't like it.
Switching through different items and stuff, and it's just like they did a really good job of like making even that part like unsettling and uncomfortable to go through.
Yeah, because like the clicking through items sounds is like a muted kind of like looping.
Yeah,
noise.
like an underwater sound.
When you pick things, it makes like a honk kind of siren sound, which is, I mean, yeah, sirens are a Silent Hill thing, and the underwater sound idea is the fact that like Silent Hill 2's canonical ending is the in-water ending.
Right.
You know, and then you start thinking, and suddenly, like, this is what I mean. This is what I mean about Silent Hill 2 is Silent Hill 2 as well. Silent Hill 2, too. Silent Hill 2 as well is that it was a game that I just remember just discussing at length with my younger brother.
Right.
And we were just, and it was just so... And I'm like, it's still a damn good game.
Oh, yeah.
It looks great.
Oh, my God.
It plays like trash, but that's the point.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're not playing the HD version, as long as you're playing the PlayStation 2 version.
And as much as I like the voice actor, like, I like Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, I like Troy Baker, but replacing Guy Seeley with that is just, it's criminal. And it's like a sin.
And not only that, when you know that Konami did some bullshit to the original cast, like they did them real dirty with their HD port, like you still feel it's like, oh god, no, I cannot enjoy this. I cannot enjoy Comic Sans in my Silent Hill.
No, Comic Sans and bad voice. No, sorry, it's Guy Seeley or bust. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, and it's So Silent Hill is a game that I have not had a ton of experience with, but you know, I know enough about it, and I like. Yeah, every time someone says, like, Silent Hill, it's always Silent Hill 2. And for good reason. For very good reason.
And I say this a lot, too. Silent Hill 3 is actually the scarier video game. Like, if we're just talking raw, like, moments, then Silent Hill 3 wins every time. Because Silent Hill 3 is, like, really scary. Oh, my God. But, just the unsettling nature of the storyline and stuff that keeps you thinking for a long, long time. Silent Hill 2 comes out on top every single time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Silent Hill 2 rules. So, speaking of 2...
I want to say, like, there is a difference between what is better and what is your favorite. And I think that's what this list is kind of all about. Like I said with Mega Man X, where it's like, yeah, I think 3 is mechanically a better game, but I like 1 way more.
Yeah, and I think as like a full package, Silent Hill 2 is the better game, because make no mistake, it is still very scary. Somebody on Reddit the other day reminded me of the Hangman puzzle, which just still, I'm like, why would you remind me of that? That's so goddamn scary.
That's the best part about Silent Hill, is that like a lot of these puzzles are just like, they're hard to do because like it's unsettling what you're doing. Like
so creepy.
When I linked it to you the other day, like we were watching the Resident Evil 7 HDQ video. And where they're talking about how, like, yeah, the Japanese version doesn't have the bit where you have to stick your hand into the police chief's neck and pull the key out because it's unsettling, and like even in the speed run, the guy tilted the camera away because it's just gross to look at, and it's just gross. And it's just gross to look at. It makes you nervous. That's what a lot of Silent Hill 2's puzzles are like, where it's like, oh god, I have to do what to get this key?
It just makes you uncomfortable. Silent Hill 2 is just, it's a more uncomfortable experience. It's not quite as scary. It's still scary, but really it's the head games that it plays with you, and that's what makes it shine. So, speaking of 2,
this is my only recency bias on this list.
Ooh, I know which one it is.
It's got to be the one and the only Super Mario Odyssey.
Yep.
I don't know if you watched the Donkey review of 2017.
I haven't gotten around to that
where he just goes hog wild on Mario Odyssey when he gets to that, and it's his number one. It's his number one, and then it's his number one, and then obviously Super Mario Bros. 2 is his number one. Right. But anyway, Super Mario Odyssey is very interesting because 2017 is a lot of games, and I go more in depth in this in the article I posted on the Patreon. But it is a game that like 2017 was a big year for a lot of story-based games. You had Nier, you had the Undertale re-release, you had all these games that are like, here's what we can do with story and gameplay. Even stuff like Breath of the Wild does a lot of like creativity with its storytelling. And then you get Mario Odyssey, and it is a mindless collectathon. It is just get the coins, get the moons, go to the next area,
do the stuff, get the thing, go here.
But Nintendo kind of like at the very end of the year, after all these great games, they're fucking mind blowing games like Horizon with the way it incorporates lore into its collectibles and stuff like that. It's all beautiful stuff. Mario Odyssey comes in and it reminds everyone that, hey, you know what? Sometimes you can just make a real damn good mindless collectathon.
Right,
and,
totally. Absolutely.
This is what I was talking about earlier today, where I was like trying to like say like you have to judge thing based on the merits that it has personally. You can't judge it outside of what it was set out to try and do. You know, like you can't, if you're going to judge Pride and Prejudice on its fight scenes, you're going to have a bad time.
Right.
Mario Odyssey, people have been giving it a lot of discredit because like, oh, it's just collecting moons. Like that's really all there is. Like there's nothing more to it. Yeah. Like what is, like people are like, what is the ultimate reward of collecting these moons? And it's like, no, the reward is you're playing a really good platformer game.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Your prize is that you can have fun.
Yeah. The prize is the experience.
Yeah.
The prize is not something you get.
The moons,
just the doing.
The moons are just ultimately getting the different moons, and there are fucking over 800 of these in the game for you to get, and they're ultimately just a target for you to have fun navigating Mario towards. And it's here it is on this ledge. Okay, well I can wall jump between these two walls, or I can ramp off this thing on this moped, and I can jump off of it, throw my hat, dive jump into the hat, bounce off of it, spin jump and twirl and dive again onto the ledge. It's fucking the amount of just like mechanics and the amount of mobility in this game is phenomenal, and it's got that Nintendo craft where you can see that like heart and soul was put into every single bit of this game. Everything down to the we mentioned this with Undertale, where like all the characters are like endearing. It's the same thing with Mario. This is a game that in every step of the way encourages you to just keep playing and to keep having fun. Whenever you go to like an area where it's like, here's a puzzle for you to solve, there's almost always a little Mario character standing there saying, hey, check out this cool puzzle. And like, if you do the puzzle and if you fail, you're like, oh, that's too bad. Try again. You can do it. I believe in you. And it's like...
Yeah, it's comfort.
It's so comforting. Like, recently, Joseph Anderson put out his review of Mario Odyssey.
I was actually listening to it today, and I really like Joe Anderson.
One of the things he says, like, he doesn't feel challenged enough playing it, and that's kind of what got me thinking about that discussion, where it's like, yeah, he doesn't feel like he's being challenged enough. That's not the point.
Right.
This is, if you want a challenging Mario platformer, there's Mario World, there's Mario Brothers 3, there's even some like 64 or Galaxy are more challenging. Mario Odyssey is the best fucking jungle gym you've ever been to. That is just stacked to the gills with stuff for you to climb and to poke and to jump off of and to swing from, and it's just a chance for you to sit down and just fucking play a video game.
Yeah, and it's like video game in its purest distillation.
Like what is a video game? Mario Odyssey is
a video game. It is the most
video game to exist in like over a decade. This game is nothing but video game mechanics. It's got a story, but everything in that story is just served for you to keep playing the game and to keep having fun trying to find new ways to find new stuff in the game.
Yeah.
And it is like... I think the Mario Odyssey coming out this year and being the game that it was is especially important that it come out this late, because I really appreciate what games are doing with story, like with Nier and Horizon and stuff like that. But like sometimes it's just good to be like, hey, here's a fucking video game for you to play. There's no twist on morality. There's no like questioning about what it means to be a gamer. We're just gonna have some fucking fun for as long as you want it to be.
Right, yeah.
And
that's fair. I mean, video games can just be video games sometimes.
I fucking love it. I fucking love it. Not only is it, like, it's just complete comfort food, but it's also perfectly handcrafted to be as absolutely fun and feel as good to play as possible. It is probably the closest you'll ever get to a perfect video game platformer.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And even, I do like Joe Anderson a lot as a game critic. I don't think he's right all the time.
Right.
And nobody can be right all the time. But even he had to concede that the moveset in Odyssey is like the best it's ever been.
It's incredible because you every so often you'll get a game where it's like, oh, there's so many mechanics in here. Like even Horizon, for instance, has like a lot of stuff you can do in that game, like for combat purposes. Right. And there's a lot of stuff that I just didn't touch because this worked better, or I felt more comfortable doing that. Mario Odyssey, every movement you have, you'll be doing it. Like every like jump mechanic you can make, every sort of like movement thing you can do, you'll be doing it throughout the game, and it'll just flow naturally, and that's what makes it really, really good.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. I think now I know what your number one is, but I'm not gonna say it yet. So I do know what your number one is now.
Yes, and what is your number two then?
My number two is like the eye-rolliest number two of all time. But it's fine. I can already hear the groans in the audience, but it's fine. Whatever. Shut up. It is Final Fantasy VII.
Of course, it's Final Fantasy VII.
How can Final Fantasy VII not be on this list, right? Like,
knowing you, of course, Final Fantasy VII is on this list.
Final Fantasy VII is and the only reason it's not one is we'll get to that in a second. But Final Fantasy VII is equal parts exactly as good as you've heard. And like the most formative I was like such a toss up between it and Ocarina of Time, because if we're talking like formative experiences that made like me into who I am now, you really could almost bundle them together. You know what I mean? Like, this could almost be like the Ocarina of Time, Final Fantasy VII. They both sit in the same spot because they both accomplished the same goal for me.
That's actually how it was with me in Breath of the Wild, where it's like, do I put Breath of the Wild as my number two?
Or do I put Wild? It's the same kind of feeling, for sure.
Kind of interesting that both of our games were Zelda games that didn't quite make the two slot.
And it's kind of like only because Zelda started it, but Final Fantasy VII finished it.
Right, right.
I've said before, I have vivid memories of being very, very young, and my brother got my brother. There's a lot to, video games and my younger brother. It's all kind of tied together. My younger brother got an N64, but he has always been bad at video games. And he always will be. Because he's not here to defend us.
Does he listen to the podcast?
He does every now and then. Yes. Hi, Trey.
You're gonna have to show him this episode then, where you shit talk him
about
his Zelda skills.
His Zelda skills, but he got Ocarina of Time. He had no idea what he's doing. I just remember like he had a room down the hall from mine, and I just remember hearing, "Hey, Sarah, can you help me?" And then I would go in and I'd help him, and that's what started it. But Final Fantasy VII, like, definitively finished it. It went from being like, Ocarina of Time is the game that I played and helped Trey with. Final Fantasy VII is the game I basically commandeered from my younger brother. Mm-hmm. After a certain point, it stopped being a game he was playing and started being a game he was watching me play. And between the music and the pre-rendered backgrounds and a story that I think is still really, really solid, even with all the weird shit that happens into it, and I guarantee you forgot about some of the weird shit in Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, I think a lot of people... Everyone forgets about a lot of the weird shit in Final Fantasy VII, but I do want to mention before we lose it, fucking the pre-rendered backgrounds in 7 are so fucking good.
The pre-rendered backgrounds in Final Fantasy VII are art.
I want to, very quickly, for indie games to leave behind the 16-bit era and move on to PS1 pre-rendered backgrounds era of your retro game.
Please.
Please do it. You can have your fucking 32 polygon models. I don't care. Give me some dope-ass pre-rendered JPEG backgrounds.
Please. Oh my god, because the backgrounds in 7 are some of the best.
Oh, they're beautiful.
They're gorgeous. They're detailed, and they are just like, there's little things you notice in them every time you go back to it, which is just like staggering. Every time you go back to FF7, especially like Wall Market and most of Midgar, and like Junon, you go back to Junon, and every time I go back, I'm really taken aback by the size of some of those screens.
It's
even for like Final Fantasy, even for 1997, 1998,
1998, like because I think we're coming. No, 1997 because we came out on the 20th anniversary, and we got no remake news.
Right, because 97 is for Japan, 98 is for the United States.
Yes.
So 1998, and it was just such a feast for the eyes, and it's so, like, gosh. There are nooks and crannies and little places to explore that you probably don't even know are there. When you're a kid and you're like, I'm gonna go down this alley. Holy shit, there's a weapon vendor down here that I didn't know was there before. Final Fantasy VII was the first time, like, Ocarina of Time was a big game world for me. Final Fantasy VII was the first time I felt that feeling that you get sometimes of, holy shit, video games can kind of do anything. Well, video games can do something that no other medium can do, in that, unlike other games and other, like, books and movies and whatever, games can put you in a place and you feel like you are there.
It's very interesting because, like, I've always wondered, like, okay, so Final Fantasy was, like, the first big mainstream RPG, right? Like, it was, like, the Final Fantasy 1 on the NES. And I've always wondered, like, when players who were unfamiliar with, like, back then when it first came out, and they did the thing where they went and grinded, went to the castle and fought Garland. I've always wondered, what was their impression of, like, there's more after this?
Yeah, right?
I've always wondered, like, was that, like, a thing they felt? Like, did they, like, think the game would be over once you beat the boss? Because, like, that's how your standard D&D campaign goes, and that's what Final Fantasy was based off of back then.
Right.
And I wonder if the same thing happened with 7, where it's like, because you spend, how much do you spend in Midgar? You spend, like, 10, 15 hours in Midgar alone, right?
Yeah, Midgar is a pretty substantial little portion. It's the first, I'd say, 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, that's 8 to 10, like, for you who's experienced it now, but, like, back then when it first came out, like, you know, you'd easily spend 10, 15 hours in there, and I wonder, like, were people like, holy shit, there's more?
There's a whole world outside of Midgar to explore, yeah.
I have to imagine there was a lot like that, especially for someone like you, for instance, who never really played a lot of games before that, be like, fuck, it opens up!
Oh my god, it opens up, and there are nooks and crannies, there are little teeny tiny things to discover, there's one-off events, there's ghosts in churches, and there's optional stuff that I've never done before. I have never beaten Emerald Weapon. To this day, there's still shit to do in Final Fantasy VII. There's chocobo races. There's the many, many optional bosses. There's so much to do in Final Fantasy VII. It was the first time I ever really realized, I will never experience anything like this in any... I won't get this out of books. I won't get this in movies, because books have to follow a specific person, and movies are very compact. But video games can meander. They can let you explore. They can let you go into little alleys and find little tiny stories. If you go into a bar in Junon at the right time during a very short window of time, you can run into the Turks off their lunch, like off the clock, just drinking. And they're just hanging out, and they won't do anything.
Yeah.
They're just chilling because they're off the clock. They'll just talk, and you can hear Rude playing poker, and it's like, that was the first time I ever really got that feeling of I can like do anything. I can just I can exist in this world, and I can just kind of take it in, and this feels like a place that you could go to. And now I'm 29, you look back at it and you're like, Popeye arms. But,
Yeah.
like, nothing can ever take those feelings away from me.
I think it's very interesting that you had that feeling playing Final Fantasy VII, because I also had that feeling playing a game too, and I think that really, like... You mentioned this when we were kind of, like, discussing our lists, because we didn't want to, like, say what our lists were outright. We kind of wanted to, like, get a feel for them. And you, like, you compared a list and you said, look, this is the difference between us, where it's like... And
yeah.
you had that feeling playing 7, you know, of, like, when the world opens up for you.
Yeah.
And I had that feeling playing Mario 64.
Yeah.
And going to Wet Dry World and being like, this world just opens up. And I think a lot of players will have that feeling playing a game at some point where it's like it finally clicks, like, holy crap, this is a huge expansive world for me to explore. Like, this...
I think...
Like, this is what video games are capable of more than movies and books and TV.
And I think that this is me. I've had 3 glasses of wine now as we've been talking. And so I'm just kind of like talking, but I think that feeling, if you get that feeling when you're young, that moment, that little click, that moment when it all snaps into place, that's what makes you want to play video games for the rest of your life.
Yeah, for sure. That's like, I mean, for me, I was playing them literally since I was a baby, but, like, you know, but, like, that, when that happens in any game, when that's, like, your first game where you're like, you're in. Oh. You're in, because, like, you will never get that experience in anything
anywhere else.
In no other form of media will you get that feeling, and that's kind of what defines this whole list. Where it's like, a lot of these games that I like on the list, or some of them are before that click happened, but, like, after that click happened is when you really start to appreciate what they can do and why they stick with you for so long.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's the difference between people who, when they played video games for funsies when they were kids, and then eventually they let go of the hobby and they moved on to something else. I think that's the difference between those people, and there's nothing wrong with letting the hobby go and going off and doing your own thing, but the difference between those people and people who are 29, 30, 40 years, 50 years old, those people had the click. That I think is what makes that moment.
I think
that moment is what makes people go from being like, just like, I'm just gonna twiddle my thumbs and play some video games, to being like deeply invested in what video games are.
Yeah, and you know, the click can be anything. It can be in any game, but it's like eventually, I think everyone just hits that moment, and it's like, oh, it's a world shift. It makes everything kind of like shift, and you realize that, like, what you're doing is something that really, really resonates with you as a person. And I think that's, like, amazing that, like, you know, you can have a game that does that, and for you, like, 7 has stuck with you for that long. That, like...
7 is that formative, because that is the game that it clicked, and everything made sense. Just, it all just made sense immediately. I was like, holy shit, I'm playing, I have control over this, and I can wander around and do things on my own time, and I'm not constricted by a 22-minute cartoon or 2-hour movie. I'm not constricted by what's happening on the pages of a book. I can just kind of meander and do my own thing and take my time, and God, how amazing is that, right?
You can approach situations differently. You can save your game. You can screw up and go back to where you were and try again and get it right this time. It's amazing, and that's like so... You will never forget that moment.
You never... and that's why Final Fantasy VII will always, even if people will be like, well, it's over. I haven't even touched on what I think is actually a really good story. Because, like, that's not why it's number 2 for me. Like, all of it's music, and it's pre-rendered backgrounds, and it's story, and just all of those things are important, but that moment where I realize, like, holy shit, these are something incredibly unique. Like, that's why Final Fantasy VII is number 2.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Totally, for sure. And that's, like, that's just so... important as a person to like have that in you, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
So, moment of truth, Boo. What's your? I know what your number one is.
You know what my number one is.
I got a feeling I know what your number one is.
And I think a lot of people who listen to the podcast know what my number one is, because I've mentioned it time and time again. I love talking about it, and I'll jump at every fucking chance I get to talk about the best game ever made, ever, and it is Chrono Trigger.
It's Chrono Trigger.
It is a game.
It's Chrono Trigger.
It is a game that I own. Let me see. There's one right there. There's two. There's three. I'm looking at my shelf right now. There's four. There's five. There's 5 distinct copies of Chrono Trigger that exist in this very room alone. I fucking absolutely, in all ways possible, adore the game Chrono Trigger. And I have told the Chrono Trigger story on the Christmas Chillcast last year.
Yes.
But it's worth repeating, just like, you know, it's that game, it's like Mega Man X. It's the same reason that X is on the list, where it's just like, it's a game I only got to experience at my cousin's house for years and years and years, and I would just replay it, and again, basically memorize the route I need to take to get to, you know, where I would have to leave off, and it's like, it just builds up and builds up and builds up, and I can always go back to Chrono Trigger and have fun. It's so important to me, and I'm positive Chrono Trigger is the reason I love time travel. It is.
Oh, for sure.
It is
Absolutely.
the reason I love Dragon Ball Z. I would not love DBZ as much as I do if it wasn't for fucking Chrono Trigger and Akira Toriyama's artwork in Chrono Trigger. I wouldn't. I wouldn't like JRPGs if it wasn't for Chrono Trigger.
It's that kind of formative. It's that level.
It's a game that is just like in every single step of the way. It's basically flawless to me. There's literally only one part in the game that I do not like, and it is Tyranno Layer. I don't.
That's fair, though.
I don't like that level, but I like the boss battle in it, and I like the music that plays in it. I just don't like.
And the character you get from that time period is like the best character in the game.
But I just don't like the layout of that dungeon, and that is the only reason. That is like the only thing I don't like about Chrono Trigger. Everything else in that game is just perfect to me.
Yeah, I totally feel it. I do, because this is actually another one of those games.
I'm trying to reserve a lot of what I'm saying for when we inevitably do the Chrono Trigger versus Chrono Cross podcast.
Oh my god, you mean
because that's going to be a fun one
podcast? Yeah, that's just turns into like a battle royale of the podcast, you know?
Yeah. I was saying that the Chrono Trigger versus Chrono Cross podcast is going to happen, and that's when I'll really, really get into the objective merits of Chrono Trigger. But as a person who experienced it growing up and will constantly go back to it, there's just so much about it that I love. I love the party members. I love the designs. I love, I've really grown to appreciate, again, like we mentioned with Mega Man X, how it looks so fucking good. I think Chrono Trigger is the best fucking game on the SNES that Square did, because better than all the Final Fantasies, there's so much, life and animation, and it's because they fucking literally assembled a goddamn Avengers Justice League of developers to make Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, Chrono Trigger has a pretty fucking radical pedigree.
By your powers combined, yeah. I love so much about it, and there's so many little, like I mentioned with, kind of like with Persona, where it's they did so many cool things with JRPGs in Persona 4 that I'm I wish were more, or Kingdom Hearts 2 even, where it's I wish this were more the default for action JRPGs. I think a lot of what Chrono Trigger does should be the mainstay for turn-based RPGs. The fucking placement of your character affecting how effective moves are. Dual techs. Oh
god, dual techs always
they're so cool
every time.
I think the simple fact that every party member has an element associated with them is really, really cool, because it affects your team composition. You know, it's not so much you want your fighter, healer, and black mage. You want, I need lightning, I need ice, and I need fire. Like, you can mix and match your party that way. There's only one other game that I think really captures this, and even then it doesn't quite do it as well. It is a DS game called Black Sigil. And
never even heard of it.
Oh, there's a reason you've never heard of it, because it was that studio's like only game. And it is a game where, like, if you just look at screenshots of it, you would think it was a Chrono Trigger sequel.
Really?
It's ridiculous how much it looks like Chrono Trigger and how much it plays like a lot like Chrono Trigger. And it's the only game I've ever seen that, like, approaches that level of, like, what Chrono Trigger did really well. And even then, it kind of misses the mark a little bit. And it's kind of like a shame, because, like, I want more games that do what this game does, because I want to keep experiencing what I loved about Chrono Trigger.
Right.
I could go on
forever
and on
I
and on about how much I fucking love this game and how much I've gotten my playtime down to 10 hours getting all the side quests done. Because again, I've just done it so much that it's all just familiar territory for me now.
Right. Yeah, Chrono Trigger is actually a game I did play. I played a hell of a lot of Chrono Trigger. I actually suffered through the PlayStation port. My first experience with Chrono Trigger was the PlayStation port.
I feel so bad
and
for you.
It didn't sour my experience of Chrono Trigger at all. That's the crazy part. I didn't at the time. I didn't realize that those load times were abnormal. So I just rolled with it, man. I just was like, well, I'll just never open my menu that often. I'll just make it work somehow. And I liked every step of the way. I loved it. I just thought it was so. It felt unique, it felt fun, it felt lively, it felt different because of the time travel mechanics and the world.
Yeah, that's what makes it really stand out, is, like, you've never seen, like, a game that, like, you've never seen the game until then, like, that did that kind of, like, storytelling beat, where it's, like, jumping between period and period, and, like, seeing the world map shift in different eras, and, like, how the it's so cool to see, like, a game that does time travel, where it's, like, you can actually, like, back then, where, like, the physical layout of the world map shifted, like, continents would shift and like divide, and, like, land masses would be overgrown. It's like, it's so cool.
It was cool because it felt unique, and it felt very well thought out, and the characters were charming, and I enjoyed every second of it, and I don't know, it just felt so different to me. The fact that you could redeem, like, the villain character and he could join your party, but it was optional. Like, the fact that Magus can join your party, that always blew my mind for some reason, because he was like a villain guy, you know what I mean?
You know what I really, really like about it is that, and I don't see a lot of games do that, where it's like, this is the only RPG I've seen where it explicitly tells you, now is side quest time.
Now is side quest time.
You can talk to a character that will say, here are the side quests you haven't done yet. And it's like, it's the only game I've seen, and it's also the only game I've seen where, like, it has a completely, perfectly justified reason as to why you're delaying fighting the final boss. Because you time travel to it. You can do it whenever the hell you want. It doesn't matter.
It's fine.
There's no rush.
And the multiple endings thing, when I was a kid, that blew my mind.
That's amazing. There are 17...
I think, like 20 different endings or something.
There is a huge number of just, like... And it's all that matters is, when do you beat the final boss? Because, again, you can time travel. You can fight the final boss at any moment. And that's just so cool and creative. And I've never seen a game that, like... that does that again.
That does that kind... Because it's so specific to the time traveling plot that you can have games that have multiple endings. We were just talking about Nier. But those multiple endings, the way they're approached in Chrono Trigger feels so unique, because it all, like you said, it's all dependent on when do you fight the final boss. That's it. Yeah. How cool is that?
But the simple fact that you are given the option to do it literally when you hit the end of time, you can do it any point after that.
You can do it, like, in a New Game Plus, you can do it pretty much as soon as the game begins.
Yeah.
It's amazing. How cool is
so
that?
cool.
Like, as a kid, that kind of thing is incredibly mind-blowing, and it's the kind of thing that sticks with you, and it's that charmingness that hangs on.
Exactly.
And man, Chrono Trigger rules.
It is.
I totally get it.
Yeah, I'm always also, like I was with Mega Man X, where I'm, like, thinking about this list, and I was like, I should just go and pop it in my DS right now and just beat Chrono Trigger again. Just
play it right
I can
now.
beat it in the evening. I know exactly what I need to do. I can go do it right now.
It's fine. Like, it's just that good.
Mm-hmm.
It's that good. I get it. I do.
So what is your number one?
There's a game that's been suspiciously left off of my list for the last 4 entries. But it was already on yours.
Yep.
So, and I don't... When I was thinking about it, I was like, is this really my favorite game? Is this my favorite? I was like having this really big conversation in my head. Like, for the whole week. I'm like, am I really going to make this my number one game when there are games that are more, like Final Fantasy VII is so impactful, and Ocarina of Time is so impactful, and Silent Hill 2 is so impactful. And I'm like, am I really about to make this game my favorite game? And then I thought about it more, and I was like, yeah. Because we had a conversation a few nights ago about the nature of a perfect video game, of what is a functionally perfect video game. And Persona 4 The Golden is functionally perfect.
Yep. It is.
And it's my favorite video game.
Just like Mario Odyssey was a functionally perfect platformer, Persona 4 The Golden is a functionally perfect JRPG.
Now, that said, there are things in Persona 4, despite our 6 hours of discussion, that I'm a little, perfection is, when I say something is perfect, it's as close to perfect as you can get, because nothing is perfect.
Right, exactly.
But Persona 4 comes as close to perfection as any game I have ever played has ever gotten. The one little niggling problem I have with it is the Nanako thing.
Right,
but
we talked about that.
We talked about it, and so there's no need to waste time on it.
Right.
Here's the thing, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot. If you can't think of any more ways to improve without ruining the fundamental experience of the game, if you cannot think of a way to improve its visuals, its music, its gameplay, and its characters, then you have created essentially a perfect video game. As close to perfection as you can get, and that is Persona 4.
And we talked about how, especially about how, we said P3 needs the P5 treatment. It needs to be brought into the P5 mechanics, the system with that, the updated graphics. And P4 does not, because
P4 doesn't.
The way the game is presented and the way it's stylized would not be it would not be hindered, but it would not be benefited by being brought into the P5 engine.
Right. Because Persona 4 is about, specifically, it is about a feeling, and it's about a place in time, and it's about nostalgia. It's about, that really important year of high school that everybody kind of had.
Yeah, it's not the bombastic adventure that 3 and 5 are. It is way, way, way more low-key than that.
It kind of at the very end becomes about saving the world, but it's not about saving the world. It's about saving kind of a feeling. It's about protecting happy memories and the feeling you have of being home, and it's incredibly just the look of the game. Golden is all you need.
Yeah.
The way Persona 4 on the PS2 looked is the only way you could improve it is to just kind of fix the resolution because it was still running on a PS2.
You need to clean up the resolution, maybe clean up the frame rate a little bit, but you don't need to update the models. You don't need to bring in new mechanics to the gameplay. You don't need to bring for example, you don't need to bring the gunplay from P5 into P4. Right. You don't need to, we talked about in the podcast, about the quality of life improvements that P5 had, and how, oh my god, it's so great how you can do this now and you can do that now. You don't really need to bring those into 4. It won't really enrich the experience of 4 as much as it did, like, improve the play style of 5.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that all of the quality of life improvements of 5 are already, their nascent versions are in the Golden. Fast travel, for example, was introduced in the Golden. You press the square button and it lets you pick where you're going. Persona 5 just finessed it to where you could pick the specific location. So if you want to go to the arcade in Shibuya, you can select the arcade in Shibuya. Persona 4, you just pick that you want to go to the shopping district north or south. But the fast travel is still there. The improvements to the fusion system where it lets you know that you've already fused that thing, those are in Persona 4 the Golden. The fusion search that lets you, instead of having to fool with guessing if this is in your if it's in your compendium, or like just showing you all of the possible combinations with the ones that are already in your roster, that's in Persona 4 the Golden. Every single quality of life improvement in Persona 5 started in the Golden, basically.
And the only reason that they exist in 5 as they are is because they need to exist in 5, and they don't need to exist in 4. You don't need to fast travel to specific locations in 4 because the map is a lot smaller.
It's tiny, yeah. And every aspect of 4, especially, and this is really true for the graphics, as Persona 4 gets older, unlike with, it's a weird thing to kind of express, but as the Golden gets older, unlike P3, those graphics help it. Those old rinky-dink character models actually help it, because it feels more and more like you're going back in time to something more quaint, because that's what Inaba is. Inaba is a quaint little piece of of your teenager.
Yeah.
Your teenagerdom.
Yeah.
And it's it's a hard feeling to, if you updated the graphics and made them all shiny and fancy, like, yeah, it would look fine. Oh no, I've been talking too long and I'm still kind of sick. Hold on. If you update the graphics of Persona 4, you would kind of lose something.
Yeah, you wouldn't. It would not be improved by giving them P5 quality models. Like the way the story is presented is not benefited by that level of production.
Yeah.
You know,
it
wouldn't be. I wouldn't say it would be hindered by it, but like,
no,
it's not.
Right?
It's not an advantage.
No, it's just. It would just be unnecessary bells and whistles, and I feel like because of the and this is like a really specific thing, but stay with me here. The rendering engine for Persona 4 versus P5, the quality of light in Persona 4 is such a unique thing, especially in the Golden with its high-res textures and just like how clear and bright it is. And it lets those like old kind of faded textures show very well. And so even though Inaba is really clean, it still feels aged. Like it's been there for a really long time. And if you updated those graphics to make it look like fancy and new the way P5 looks, you would lose something in the process.
It's the same thing with the pre-rendered backgrounds in Final Fantasy VII. You know, where
for sure.
If you updated those, if you cleaned them up, it wouldn't improve your experience. You know, it's kind of the same thing. Like if you look at the PC port of Final Fantasy VII, which is a bit cleaner. The models are a bit more high poly. It's not better as a result.
No.
It's objectively it looks nicer, but your experience of playing the game is not necessarily improved by upping the quality, because part of the appeal is the way that it looks as it is.
Right.
And
if you make it too clean, then Final Fantasy VII's diesel punk aesthetic is ruined.
Yeah,
you know,
the same thing with 4, where it's like 4 is set in a small town with relatively low stakes. It's just a guy. It's just it's about a murder mystery. It's not about righting injustices in a social Tokyo. It's not about literally saving the world from a nightmare hour And, you know, it's very low stakes, and it's not improved by upping the production quality of it. The same reason that you wouldn't add a lot of high filter special effects to, say, a noir movie. You know, there's a difference between, say, the movie Brick and Thor Ragnarok. Like,
yeah, exactly.
One of those movies is improved by adding more lens flare and special effects, and one of those movies is not.
Because, and that's actually a really good way to phrase it, because Brick and noir movies and Persona 4 have this same idea in common of, especially because Persona 4 is literally about the truth. It's about finding what is true to you versus finding what is true to the rest of the world, and what's important, and facing up to like the way things really are. Big flashy graphics and stuff instead of showing the world as it really is, which is, you know, occasionally a little run down and sometimes kind of drab and sometimes kind of boring. But it has like a beauty in its normalcy. To make it prettier and flashier would rob it of that feeling of like you are in the real world, and Inaba is like a real honest to God place, and Inaba feels more real to me than Tokyo does, in even with all of the fact that Tokyo is more realistically modeled after actual places like Shinjuku and Shibuya and Inkokashira Park and all that stuff. Tokyo feels less real to me than Inaba. Inaba feels like an actual, like a real place in the world.
I just realized we have a perfect representation of this exact problem, and that is the original trilogy and the remastered editions of that, where it's like it's not improved by adding better CG. It's at the very worst, it's hindered by adding this. At the very best, it's just a neutral shift.
And that's what Persona 4 is to me. Because of the fact that you couldn't add anything to P4 the Golden at this point to make it better. I mean, you really couldn't.
The Golden was the upgrade it needed for quality of life purposes, and for just making it a little bit more higher resolution, and for making it display a little bit better, kind of eliminating a lot of the, like, filtering issues that it had. But that's all you needed.
It took away the gray. It took away the grayness that comes with like old PS2 games.
Yeah.
But that's really all it ever needed, and because of it, and because of like the thematic stuff that the Golden adds, with the Adachi social link and the Marie social link, and more time to hang out with your friends, and all that stuff, and a really, really damn good optional dungeon. It's just perfect.
Yeah, that's all you needed was just those little bit extra and
to push it.
Yeah, and then you're done.
And I mean, and again, your favorite video game is it's a little bit tied up into time and place and emotions, and how near and dear it is to your heart. And I have spent like 8-9 years playing P4 at this point. And, kind of like with Chrono Trigger, I don't think Persona 4 could ever get old to me. I did all the social links in P5. I filled out my compendium, and I was like, I'm kind of done with it for now. Like, I tried to replay it the other day, and I was just kind of like it's still a good game, but it's not a game I feel like really like compelled to go back to. I have done basically everything in Persona 4, and I'm still like, no, I want to go back. I'm going to go back. I want to play it again. I'm going to feel those feelings again.
I think the most important thing about this top 5 list, and I think in general, is that like what you ultimately have to like keep in mind is that like you need to pick games that will never get old for you. And there are a few on this list that it didn't make it on the list that are like that, but like none of the games on my list are games that I could ever be like, I would. Their quality of whether or not I want to play them shifts, but like there's never a point where I'm like, I don't want to play that. Like I could always pop in Mega Man X and have fun. I could always pop in Kingdom Hearts 2 and have fun.
Yeah.
All that, like, there are games that I want to be playing more at the moment, but like,
right.
I'm even tempted right now to pop in Chrono Trigger. I'm like, I should be playing Yakuza 0 right now because that's what's in my PS4. But I'm like, I kind of want to play Chrono Trigger a little bit, and it's just
now I kind of want to play Persona 4 again. I thought I was going to play around on my new PC.
The feeling is there, and I think that's what really, like we said earlier, where it's like that click happens. I think that's also what important to appreciate about games like this, where it's like, as long as you can never get sick of them, that just kind of shows how important they are to you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I mean that is what P4 is.
Yeah.
I'll never get tired of it. I'll never, and it's just kind of like it'll always kind of be in the back of my head, like forever, probably. Probably for the rest of my life.
It's a game that and especially because hey, it's on handheld, so you can play it whenever, and all video games should be on handhelds.
And hey, where is the PS4 re-release of the Golden Sun?
Yeah,
so that we can more people can play the excellent version of Persona 4.
I will never ever understand why the PS3 release got the PlayStation 2 port of.
I don't get it. I don't.
The
understand.
Golden was out. Like you can put it on the PS3. The Vita and the PS3 are compatible. We know this because a lot of games do that.
You can put it on the PS4 now because nobody's buying a Vita.
Yeah. Sony, the Vita is dead. It's dead. It's dead. The 3DS won and the Switch really won. You lost. Give up.
Please put Persona 4 on the PS4 so that more people can play the ideal version of P4. The Golden needs to be played by everybody.
The Persona 5 sold like gangbusters, not only here but also in Japan. So hey, now is the perfect time to re-release the Golden, which is the progenitor of P5.
Just do it. P5, I mean, and so ultimately that's just what it boils down to, is that Persona 4 is probably, at least for right now, I'll see you in a year.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite video game right now.
It'll be very interesting to see how this list changes. Not only because stuff's going to come out, hopefully Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out this year, and that'll bump Kingdom Hearts 2 off the list finally. But
I don't believe it, but we'll see.
But whatever your taste, like I said, my taste shifted from Star Fox 64 to Mega Man X because I watched AGDQ. That's all it took to be no, this one's my favorite right now.
Right, yeah, of course.
The list can change, and there's so much stuff that will cycle in and out, and you'll remember a game that you loved, and you'll go back and play it and be like, oh fuck, this is one of the best games I've ever played. And that's all it'll take, and that's what makes video games so amazing. And yeah.
This was a good idea.
This was a really good. This is probably the most Gorge indulgent podcast we've ever done. This particular topic is this is what the Gorge. This is what the Gorge is all about.
It's just over discussing how much we love certain games. But yeah, absolutely.
I do want to say this is kind of a thing we're going to focus on this year. We're going to be, because 2017 was a heavy hitter for a bunch of modern releases that hit real fucking hard, real fast.
Oh god, let me rest.
So we are going to basically rest this year, and we are going to be focusing a lot more on older games. And so I think that's going to be really fun, because there's a lot of old shit that I never played and a lot of old shit you never played. And it's kind of like the bonus of like you said earlier, where the difference between being a PlayStation kid and a Nintendo kid. We have a lot of
is that there's a whole generation for both of us.
Yeah, we have a lot of shit that I can be like, hey, play this one. You can be like, no, you play this one.
Right, absolutely. Which is kind of how this whole mess started. Is that we were you play this and I'll play this, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Yeah, so there will be a lot more older stuff to discuss, and we're both really excited about.
We have 1,000. We're our game list every time we talk is we should have this one.
Yeah.
We should have this one. Let's have this one. Oh no.
Yeah. I was like,
oh no.
I'm going to try to pick 12 games, and so we can do one a month of my list and one a month of her list. And I'm like, I can't pick just 12 games.
There's too many.
There's so much cool older shit that is like
there's
formative.
Too much. There's too much good shit. So we'll see what comes first.
We will.
So,
but yeah, that was just like we had a fucking killer year last year, and we wanted to start things off with a real feel good podcast. And I think, God, I love video games.
Video games are pretty cool. Video games are pretty cool. They're pretty good hobby. Yeah.
So I think that's about it for us for this one.
I think that's it.
Right.
We actually came in at sub 2 hours. I'm impressed.
Thanks to Visager for use of our background music. You can follow us on Twitter at the Gorge Podcast. You can email us about your favorite game or about what I want to hear from fans. I really tell me your click. If you have a click,
that would be good.
Send that to thegorgepodcast@gmail.com or send it to us on Twitter. Legit, I really want to hear what your click was, because I really...
Yeah, when did video games click for you?
When did you, this was the moment for me? I want to hear that. So you can email those to, again, thegorgepodcast@gmail.com. And Sarah, what is your other podcast?
Hey, I'm in another podcast with some cool cats. It's called Big Gay Nerds. It's an LGBT live play tabletop podcast where me and a bunch of cool friends get together and play different tabletop games every month, basically. Right now we're going back to Blades in the Dark, which is kind of like a cool Dishonored/Thief inspired video or game system. You should check us out. We're at Big Gay Nerds on SoundCloud and Patreon, and you can find us on Twitter from there. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So that'll do it for us. God, there's nothing this week.
There's nothing this week. I'm filled with too many positive
Too many good vibes to tell anyone to go fuck themselves. So we're not going to do it this week.
We love all of you. How's that? So in a completely different twist, we love all of you, and we love video games, and happy 2018.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.